Right. So GB News just screeched to a halt mid-broadcast because apparently the government's been having us on. Again. I know. Shocking stuff. Ben Leo literally stopped his show, like full emergency broadcast mode, to drop the bombshell that Keir Starmer knew about the so-called fiscal black hole being about as real as my chances of affording a house in London. But before we proceed, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more updates on the UK political insight. Thank you. And yet Rachel Reeves still went ahead and told us all we needed tax rises to fill this gaping void that, spoiler alert, didn't actually exist. If this were a Netflix series, you'd call it unrealistic. But no, this is just Tuesday in British politics. Stick around because this mess gets juicier than a cabinet minister's expenses claim, and we're diving into every glorious detail. So let me set the scene for you. It's a late evening on GB News. Ben Leo is doing his thing, probably expecting a normal show about whatever controversy is flavor of the week, when suddenly he goes full newsroom drama mode. Breaking news, klaxon. He announces that Downing Street has reportedly admitted that Sir Keir Starmer knew there was no black hole. Let that sink in for a second. The Prime Minister apparently had the Office for Budget Responsibility telling him the forecast was actually positive, and he still gave Rachel Reeves the green light to bang on about this fictional financial crater. If this were a Netflix series, you'd call it unrealistic, but no, this is just Tuesday in British politics. Stick around because this mess gets juicier than a cabinet minister's expenses claim, and we're diving into every glorious detail. So let me set the scene for you. It's a late evening on GB News. Ben Leo is doing his thing, probably expecting a normal show about whatever controversy is flavor of the week, when suddenly he goes full newsroom drama mode. Breaking news, klaxon. He announces that Downing Street has reportedly admitted that Sir Keir Starmer knew there was no black hole. Let that sink in for a second. The Prime Minister apparently had the Office for Budget Responsibility telling him the forecast was actually positive, and he still gave Rachel Reeves the green light to bang on about this fictional financial crater. It's like being told your bank account is empty when you've actually got a decent balance, except instead of affecting just you, it affects 67 million people and their pension plans. Now, for months, and I mean months, we've been hearing about this alleged black hole left by the Conservatives. £22 billion of missing cash. A fiscal disaster zone, the apocalypse in spreadsheet form. Labour's been dining out on the story harder than MPs at a subsidized Commons restaurant. Rachel Reeves stood up during the budget and essentially said we need to raid everyone's wallets because the Tories left the cupboards bare. Farmers got hammered, pensioners lost their winter fuel payments, inheritance tax got a makeover nobody asked for, and businesses are looking at national insurance hikes that make their accountants weep. All because of this black hole. Except how we're finding out the black hole might have been more fictional than Boris Johnson's commitment to following party rules. The revelations came via the Sunday Telegraph and the Mail on Sunday because of course they did. Nothing says Sunday morning like your government's credibility getting absolutely demolished alongside your full English. According to these reports, Keir Starmer knew the OBR's forecast was positive. He knew the black hole narrative was, to use the technical economic term, absolute nonsense. And yet he signed off on it anyway. This is like knowing your mate is lying about why they can't come to your birthday party but backing them up when they tell everyone they had food poisoning. Except in this case, the birthday party is the entire British economy and the food poisoning is made-up fiscal policy. Ben Leo wasn't holding back either. He flat out asked if it's time for Rachel Reeves to resign. Then he went further and questioned if Keir Starmer himself should pack it in. And then, because why stop there, he threw in whether we need another general election. That's quite the escalation. It's like watching someone go from asking if dinner was nice to demanding a full refund, speaking to the manager, and leaving a 1-star review on TripAdvisor. But honestly, can you blame him? If the government knowingly used a false narrative to justify unpopular tax rises, that's not just a political misstep. That's a credibility crisis with a side order of potential scandal. Later in the show, political commentator Benedict Spence joined, and he did not come to play nice. He called the whole situation egregious, which is the posh way of saying absolutely outrageous and unforgivable. Spence pointed out something crucial here that goes beyond Westminster drama and into real-world consequences. Businesses make decisions based on government economic messaging. People decide whether to invest in the UK or take their money elsewhere. Young people look at the economic forecast and think, maybe Australia doesn't look so bad after all. When your government is painting a picture of economic doom that isn't actually accurate, that has genuine ramifications. Companies pull investments, talented workers emigrate, consumer confidence tanks. It's not just political theater, it's economic sabotage dressed up as fiscal responsibility.
Spence went even harder when he said this was being used as cover for ideological welfare spending because the party isn't mature enough to actually cut anything. Ouch. That's essentially saying Labour wanted to spend money on their pet projects but didn't want to be honest about it, so they invented a crisis to justify raiding everyone's pockets. It's like telling your partner you need money for urgent car repairs when you really just fancy a new gaming console. Except again, this gaming console costs billions and affects the entire country. Spence then dropped what might be the biggest line of the night when he said this should be the moment backbenchers find the gumption to say these two need to go. That's not just criticism, that's a full-blown call for a leadership change from your own side. When commentators start openly discussing whether your backbencher should oust you, your political capital is circling the drain faster than water in a broken sink. The public reaction has been exactly what you'd expect, which is to say, absolutely furious. GB News viewers flooded the comment section on social media with responses ranging from bemused disbelief to outright rage. One viewer pointed out that in a functioning democracy, this would trigger an immediate general election. Another questioned how the government can possibly get away with scrapping pensioners' winter fuel payments based on a fiscal crisis that apparently didn't really exist. That's a fair question, actually. Imagine being an elderly person who just lost their heating support because the government claimed there was no money, only to find out the financial situation wasn't nearly as dire as claimed. That's not just politically dodgy, it's morally questionable at best and potentially cruel at worst. The show also touched on whether Rachel Reeves would even survive until Christmas in her role, with hosts describing it as crunch time for the Prime Minister. That's quite the festive prospect, isn't it? Instead of wondering what you're getting for Christmas, Westminster is wondering if the Chancellor will still have her job. Nothing says holiday cheer like a potential cabinet resignation under a cloud of controversy. The political pressure is mounting faster than snow in a British panic buy situation, and both Reeves and Starmer are feeling the heat, despite it being December. What makes this whole situation particularly spicy is the potential for an investigation. Spence raised the possibility during his appearance, and frankly, it's hard to see how one doesn't happen at this point. If the government knowingly misrepresented the fiscal situation to justify unpopular policies, that deserves scrutiny beyond just media coverage and angry constituents. We're talking about fundamental questions of governmental honesty and accountability. Did Labour deliberately mislead the public about the state of the economy? Were decisions made based on political convenience rather than fiscal reality? These aren't trivial questions. They go to the heart of democratic governance and public trust. The immigration point Spence mentioned is particularly interesting because it hints at a longer-term problem Labour might be creating. Young people are already looking at housing costs, stagnant wages, and limited opportunities and thinking maybe Britain isn't the place to build a future. If you add governmental dishonesty and artificial economic pessimism to that mix, you create an environment where talented, educated young people decide to take their skills elsewhere. That's a brain drain Britain can't afford, especially post-Brexit, when attracting and retaining talent is more crucial than ever. When your government is scaring people away with fictional economic crises, you're not just losing the next election, you're losing the next generation of taxpayers, innovators, and workers. The comparison to the Conservative Party's various scandals is unavoidable here. Labour spent years hammering the Tories over integrity, honesty, and trustworthiness. Partygate, various ethics investigations, the revolving door of ministers, all of it was ammunition for Labour to position themselves as the adults in the room, the ones who would restore honest governance. And now, barely months into their term, we're having serious conversations about whether the Prime Minister and Chancellor knowingly misled the public about the economic situation to justify ideologically driven policies. The irony is so thick you could spread it on toast. If you campaigned on being the trustworthy alternative and then get caught potentially doing exactly what you accused your opponents of doing, lying to the public, your political foundation is built on sand and the tide is coming in fast. What happens next is genuinely uncertain, which is rare in politics where most dramas follow predictable patterns. Will there be an investigation? Will backbenchers actually develop the backbone to challenge leadership? Will Rachel Reeves offer her resignation, or will Starmer stand by her regardless of the political cost? Will the opposition party smell blood and go for the jugular? And most importantly, will the British public get any actual answers about whether they were deliberately misled about the state of the economy? These aren't trivial questions. They go to the heart of democratic governance and public trust. The immigration point Spence mentioned is particularly interesting because it hints at a longer-term problem Labour might be creating. Young people are already looking at housing costs, stagnant wages, and limited opportunities and thinking maybe Britain isn't the place to build a future. If you add governmental dishonesty and artificial economic pessimism to that mix, you create an environment where talented, educated young people decide to take their skills elsewhere. That's a brain drain Britain can't afford, especially post-Brexit when attracting and retaining talent is more crucial than ever. When your government is scaring people away with fictional economic crises, you're not just losing the next election, you're losing the next generation of taxpayers, innovators, and workers. So there you have it. Another day, another political scandal.